today's video we are going to talk about the first Berserker Khazan stats and build crafting and what can you expect once the game releases on March 25th. Remember that a lot of this information comes from the demo, and all of these stats, all of these numbers, all of the things that I'm going to be mentioning to you, they come from that because, yeah, this basically confirms everything that we need to know about the Souls-like combat system and stat system and build crafting system that it has. So that's what we're going to be discussing. There's a lot of people that have been mentioning in my videos for my weapons guide, which we're just missing the dual blades. That's going to be coming after this video, so don't worry about that. I know that a lot of people has already mentioned for me to make that one as well. It's already cooking. That being said, this is also, there's a lot of people that have been mentioning to me that this is going to be the first Souls-like, and I advise actually to recommend for this to be the first Souls-like of a lot of people because it has it has difficulty systems, so it has an easy mode in case you're shying away from Souls-likes because the difficulty is way too much for you. Let me tell you that one of the most the better aspects that we love about Souls-likes is the precision and how chirurgically the combat system feels on Souls-likes, and this is no different. However, if you do want to make a meta build, that's something that you are going to be able to do. We are going to be looking at terminology, the stats, what the stats are going to do for you, how should you build your character, and which weapons should you be using for that specific purposes, because yes, there is some kind of a respec system. We'll talk about that a little later on. But you do have to marry to a specific certain stat because we're going to be discussing about scaling as well, and scaling is a thing. So all of that, all about that. There's some huge changes that you can see from your regular Souls-likes in here with a couple of things, but more often than not, most of everything, it still remains to be the same. Before we continue, a little small tiny word from today's sponsors, Naxi, a rewards app where you can get cool rewards just by playing. You can earn gift cards that you can spend on Xbox, PlayStation, and Steam, because if you're gonna be playing something on your free time, might as well just get something out of it, right? Download on Android right now. You can find links in the video description so you can start piling up those games. Alright, now that out of the way, these are the stats that we have on the first Berserker Khazan. Each stat is going to give you a increase into something. We have vitality, endurance, strength, willpower, and proficiency. The stats are going to give you the damage of your weapon, overall, the overall damage of your weapon. But also, they have like very specific increases. For example, increasing vitality, that's something that should always have as a must. It is not only going to increase your health, but it's also going to increase your weight. Remember that your weight is going to determine the agility, and the agility determines the iframes when you dodge the enemy, and how much stamina do you gain back if you have a heavy armor. If you're too heavy, and you're not going to be recovering stamina that fast, and all of that is going to come into mind when it comes to the agility. So ideally, this is a number that you would want to have on like the regular colors that you see in here. For example, the green would be the ideal, but blue it's like medium, and then yellow it's like I mean, it's not so bad, but it's variable. And then we have the red, which is just going to be overweight. You shouldn't be playing while you're overweighting your character, so your armor is going to have to do something with that. Now, one of the most meta stats that I think that it is going to be a meta is going to be endurance. If we compare this on how I use my formula to play Souls-likes, I usually play with 20 endurance in every single Souls-like that I play. And the reason for that is very simple. Whether if it's Lies of P, Lords of the Fallen, Neo, well, not necessarily Neo. Neo has a kind of a different stat system, but Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Elden Ring, any kind of Souls-like that you can think of, I always have endurance in 20, because the endurance in 20, it allows you to be able to be measuring the enemy's movements, and I just want to have enough stamina to be able to attack a couple of times, maybe 5 times, and be able to block and dodge and be able to manage it, and that's it. That's usually the ideal thing that I personally do on every Souls-like. depending on the build. For example, if you're building a turtle, which is something very meta and very broken on Souls games, specifically Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, and Elden Ring, if you're building a turtle, then yes, endurance on 40 with high shields, with high strength, that's something very powerful. That's not going to be the case in here because we don't have poking weapons while you poke from behind a shield, but still, I think that endurance is going to be one of the most important and meta stats in this game, because while we have a base for a Souls-like combat system, this is also a game that heavily relies on combos. The most damaging, staggering, and poise-breaking attacks are going to be coming from combos. And there's going to be combos that you're not going to be able to do if you don't have enough stamina. Now remember that also soft cap, hard cap, and caps are a thing on Souls-likes. So for example, as soon as you reach a certain threshold, let me give you a quick example. This is not, I'm going to have more detail on this when the game releases. These are not the soft caps and hard caps and caps that we have on the game. But just to give you an example, let's say that from 0 to 40, you get 5 points in stamina every time that you level up. Well, we get 12. As soon as you level up a little bit more, you start getting diminishing returns. Maybe at 40, it's not even worthwhile to increase your endurance, so you should be investing, because that's when you get to the hard cap, and then once you pass the hard cap threshold, you barely get like any kind of increase until you reach the cap of the stat, which is usually 99, which then again we do not know if that's going to be the case in here. One interesting thing about it all is that also gear has stats, so that's very powerful. Let's say, for example, that you do not want to invest yourself that much on one specific stat because maybe you want to increase the damage of your weapon, and you still feel that you're not pulling out your combos the way that you're pulling them out, then you might as well get some stamina in here, and there's a couple of them that give a little bit more than what you usually get. So for example, this gives 12 stamina, which is the equivalent of 1 point into endurance. But have in mind that endurance is going to give you extra little things that stamina is not going to give you. So ideally, it's a better idea to focus maybe on the overall general stat gainage that you are going to get, and then the extra little things that these are not going to be affected by soft caps. These are raw numbers that you're always going to get. So for example, if you already reach your soft cap for strength and you cannot increase your weapon power that much, then you can get attack damage, which is going to give you native damage point value. So let's talk about what I'm telling you about the scaling so that you understand a little bit better about that. Strength, willpower, and proficiency. These guys are also going to give you extra little things when it comes to the stats. However, those extra little things are going to be increasing not only the damage of the weapon, but they are going to be focusing on how the weapon should be played. They are going to be complementing the playstyle. Let me give you the example of strength. Strength is going to increase the damage of greatswords because, as you can see, if we go over here and we check up on the greatswords that I have right here, it has a strength scaling, meaning the more strength that I invest into my character, this is going to increase my weapon damage. It also has proficiency scaling, but the scaling in here it's a little bit lower. There's also on different Souls-likes, we do not know if that's going to be the case in here. I'm pretty sure that it will. But in different Souls-likes, there's items that you can attach to your weapons to change the scaling, but overall they are better used to improve the scaling that they already have. So for example, if we already have a strength scaling B in here, maybe instead of adding more proficiency scaling, we want to add more strength scaling so that B turns into an A, which is going to increase the potentiality of your build that you are building towards strength. Now, that being the case, I did mention that they are also going to complement whatever that you are going to be being with that build and that specific weapon. On the case for the greatsword, it's only natural that you are going to be using the heavy armor and the hyper armor that you get from that playstyle, because if you check my greatsword video when it comes to the weapon and how to use the weapon, it heavily relies on the hyper armor. But to be able to use that hyper armor to the full advantage, we also need to be using heavy armor, which, as you can see, is why when you place points into strength, you're going to be gaining weight points, which is going to ultimately be a good synergy between the attack damage that you're going to receive and the heavy armor that you're going to receive. But also the additional stats are very important because this also synergize with the overall playstyle of the weapon. With the strength weapons, then again, we want to be using hyper armor as much as we can possibly can. And since we are going to be using hyper armor, we are going to receive damage. But the more strength that you have in here, the less receive stamina damage that you are going to receive whenever you deal stamina. And whenever the enemy deals damage to you, there's less stamina that you're going to lose because of the damage that you are receiving. On the other hand, for example, we have proficiency, and the overall playstyle of the spear, which is the stat that that weapon uses to increase the damage, is also going to give you stamina damage increase. And yes, that is a weapon that we have already showcased as well, that it shows that it's a weapon that you should be using to break the enemy stance, to break the enemy posture, but it's also a very nimble weapon that rather than blocking with that weapon, you can be blocking with that weapon, but ideally you want to be dodging with that very fast weapon. As a matter of fact, it has very good combos that you can chain if you're dodging with that specific spear, with that specific weapon. So getting the stamina damage increase and the dodge stamina cost decrease in here means that you should be adopting a more nimble playstyle with that weapon that's going to be increasing its damage by placing points into proficiency. On the other hand, the willpower, which is for dual wielding, here's where you're going to be using block a little bit more, which means that you are going to receive a guard stamina damage decrease every time that you're blocking. The enemy is going to deal less damage to your stamina when you're blocking while you're using dual wielding, but also not only that, is going to increase your stamina recovery rate for you to be able to continue with the Berserker kind of combos that you are going to have in there. So that's the gist of everything, like the surface of everything. Like I said, we do not have the hard caps and the soft caps right now. I do have like 20 levels and I have been toying around with that. I have been leveling my character and I have been using the Respec item, which then again, it's very important that you know how to use these stats, how to level these stats with the specific weapon that you're using. Because yes, while we have infinite amount of Respec when it comes to our skill tree, when it comes to respecting a character, we have the primeval regression orbs. And these guys, they well, you can see that we can have up to 9,999. I'm guessing that that's just a placeholder, like the rest of the things that we have in here. Well, yeah, the placeholders are like kind of tricky. Anyways, we do not know how leniency are we going to be able to use these guys, but these guys are an epic consumable that you're probably, or you might not be able to use at your leisure. So we want to be careful about this. So you do need to learn which weapon are you going to marry to by learning the moveset, by learning how does the weapon feels, how to play that weapon, but also which stats are going to alter my weapon, which stats am I going to be using for that weapon, and which alternative stats are going to complement the playstyle of the damage that I'm going to have with that weapon. Anyways, if you like the content, like and never super appreciated. Not all you today, you're gorgeous and beautiful person. You're in the gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, join the Discord. Have a beautiful day, goodbye.